They say I'm a homicidal maniac, that I'm dangerous to society. They say that during one of my violent spells I killed a woman, murdered her with my bare hands. But this isn't true. I've told my story 1,000 times, but no one believes me. I keep telling it over and over, hoping that someday someone who listens will believe me and get me out of this madhouse. You read it, won't you? It won't take long, and I swear that I'm telling the truth. When I graduated from the university after 7 long years of hard work, lack of money prevented me from taking the rest I should have had. I was compelled to go to work immediately for financial reasons. I'd been a brilliant student and a good research chemist, so I had little trouble finding a job. I went to work for a chemical synthetics trust, and they sent me to a small city where one of their factories were located. I had difficulty finding a place to live, but managed finally to locate in 2 comfortable rooms over a store. There was one other apartment in the building, but it was unoccupied. It had been empty for years, and my landlord told me it was not for rent. When I asked him why, he became annoyed. "It's my building, ain't it? If I want to keep that place locked up and empty, that's my business." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry." "It's all right, young man. Now we know where we stand. I'm renting you these rooms for half of what they're worth, and I expect you to keep away from that other apartment." "You have my promise." The place looked drab from the outside, but my rooms were quite spacious and very comfortable. In the rear there was a balcony that ran along the entire building, and I found this a very pleasant place to sit in the evenings. It was cool and quiet, so I spent an hour or 2 out there every night after dinner. One evening I was sitting there, my eyes closed and dozing, when I became aware of something going on behind me. I opened my eyes and looked around. Much to my surprise, I saw a light coming from the windows of the supposedly empty apartment. Someone had evidently moved in, and I had a new neighbor. I wondered what they were like, so I arose from my chair and tiptoed over to the window. I was just about to peek in when the lights were suddenly turned out. So I learned nothing from my spying. I returned to my apartment and undressed for bed. The conduct of my new neighbor struck me, and I couldn't help thinking about it as I lay there in bed waiting for sleep to come. I lay there 2 hours or so, half asleep, listening to the night creakings of the old building. Suddenly, the feeling I was not alone struck me. I listened for sounds, but heard nothing unusual. I could stand it no longer. I jumped from my bed and turned on the lights. I looked around, and there in the middle of my bedroom was an enormous Persian cat.
Meow.
Strangely golden-colored, it stood gazing at me with phosphorescent eyes. Her mouth moved again, but this time no sound came from her throat. I called to it. "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty! Here, kitty!"
Meow.
She came over and rubbed against my legs. I stooped over and patted her. She seemed greatly pleased by this attention and jumped up on my bed. I spoke sharply to her. "Get down off that bed!" I started toward her. She backed away, her ears back. Her tail was switching, her eyes glared. "Scat, kitty, scat!"
Meow.
She jumped to the floor again and hid under the furniture. I felt no animosity for the cat, so I decided to let her stay in the room. I climbed back into bed and promptly fell asleep. When I awoke the next morning, my first thoughts were of my new neighbor and the visit of that beautiful golden cat. I arose and found myself looking for the creature. "Kitty, kitty, kitty, kitty! Here, kitty, 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 kitty!" But there was no sign of the cat anywhere. I know you think there's nothing remarkable about my story so far. It all seems so ordinary when I tell it now, but then it struck me as uncanny and strange. It went on this way for almost 2 weeks. The lights in the next apartment always went out when I approached, and the cat appeared and disappeared at will. It was making me nervous. I felt that I must solve this mystery. That night, I stole softly to the balcony. Luck was with me, for the lights were lit. Reaching the window without making a sound, I looked in. At one end of the room, facing me, stood a sofa, and reclining on this was a woman, young and pretty. Her hair fell over her shoulders in a rain of gold. She was looking at herself in a hand mirror, and after passing her forearms over her lips, she stroked her hair with a weird cat-like grace. A board creaked. Instantly she was on the alert. I felt her eyes fixed upon me, strange-looking eyes of green. She stared at me, and against my will, drew me into the room. She smiled.
Oh, it's you.
"I'm sorry I've been spying on you."
Don't apologize. I'm glad you've come. I'm alone so much, it's nice to have someone to talk to.
I was reassured and pleased that she seemed glad I'd come. She invited me to sit down beside her. Little by little, I found my tongue, and we spent a very pleasant evening together. We sat there talking until she suddenly was aware that the clock was striking.
What time is it?
It's striking 12.
Oh, you must go at once. You must be out of here by the last stroke of midnight.
Her alarm was so genuine, I started to leave at once. I don't see why you must chase me away so abruptly.
Don't ask questions, but go. Go quickly.
It took only a few seconds for me to return to my apartment. I sat by the window in the darkness. The last stroke of the bell barely faded into silence when I felt the now familiar and gentle stroking of the golden cat against my legs. By this time, I'd become very fond of her, so I picked her up and took her in my arms. She settled herself in my lap, utterly contented. After that, I spent every evening in the apartment next door, but every evening I had to leave before midnight, and every evening when I came home, the golden cat was waiting for me. One night as I was sitting in my room before going to bed, an idea came to me, an idea that grew and grew until it became an obsession. I had come to believe that my lovely neighbor and the golden cat were one and the same. They both had the same eyes and the same color hair. I decided to mention the cat the next time I saw the girl next door. Have you noticed the golden cat, the one that's been around my apartment?
You must mean Linda. She's my cat.
Your cat? Strange, I never see her here.
I'm afraid when you see me, you'll never see Linda.
She spends her nights in my place. In fact, she's there most of the time.
Yes. Linda likes men better than she does women.
Soon a vague sort of terror began haunting me. I felt that sanity was slipping from me. The belief that the cat and woman were one grew and grew. I fell in love with the woman deeper and deeper, and I began to fear the cat, the poor, harmless golden cat. I spent long nights in sleepless torment, such as maniacs must suffer. If I could only see the two together, all my fears would vanish. But this was not to be. For try as I would, I found it impossible to get the two in the same room at the same time. I began to be mentally disturbed. My mind was going. I must do something to retain my balance. I must convince myself that this was just a delusion. There was only one way. I must get rid of that cat. All day long, one idea came rushing through my mind. Tonight, after midnight, when she comes into my room, I'll do away with her. That evening, the woman was more beautiful, more charming than she had ever been. I told her how much I loved her, and she told me of her love for me. I kissed her. I held her in my arms. I was happy, happier than I'd ever been before. When midnight approached, I begged not to go, but she made me leave. Back in my room, the golden cat soon appeared. She seemed even more affectionate than usual. I picked her up. I held her very carefully. Then slowly, I tightened my grip. I was determined to crush her, to strangle her, to be rid of her forever. She sensed this at once. She fought and scratched. But I felt nothing. I knew nothing. Nothing but the desire to kill her. Tighter and tighter, I squeezed her throat. Only once I looked at her. There was no fear or loathing in her eyes, only reproach, deep, deep reproach. And then she died. I laid her on the floor, and as I did so, there was a knock, and I answered it. What's going on here? Sounds like someone being murdered. I've just killed my cat, a beautiful golden cat. It didn't sound like no cat to me. What's that over there on the floor? That's Linda, the cat. It don't look like no cat, neither. It looks more like a woman. I whirled around and looked. There on the floor lay the woman, her eyes closed, her golden hair streaming down her back. The woman was dead. I've told you everything just as it happened. You believe me, don't you? You'll get me out of this madhouse. You won't let them keep me here any longer, will you? I'm not mad. I'm sane. I didn't kill her. I loved her. It was a cat I killed. A beautiful golden cat.